So let's talk about what this panel is going to be, though. Bad martial arts. I'd like to start by setting up what this panel is and also what it isn't, so you kind of know what to expect. What it is this panel is designed to demonstrate famous or common martial arts that are ineffective and also to provide better alternatives to those techniques. What this panel is not, it's not designed to critique any specific martial art. It's also not meant to replace any martial arts training. And this is a very important point. I don't want to see anybody leaving here and just being like, all right, I got this. I'm about to walk into a dark alley. I'm about to some criminals. Let's go. No dark knighting after this panel. You got me? Nods, yes? Okay, cool. Then we can proceed. So, before we start talking about what bad martial arts are, we have to talk about what good martial arts are. There's going to be a lot of demonstrations in this. So if you're somebody who likes demonstrations, you can be a part of this panel. So just think about that if you want to volunteer. If not, I've got some lovely, incredible volunteers right over here who I brought with me just in case. So what makes a good martial art technique? We tend to break it down. There's more ways you can break it down than this, but at the most simple level, it's that they are simple, they are effective, and they have a high rate of success. When we say something is simple, what we're trying to say is, one, it's easy to execute. So a good technique should be straightforward and intuitive to perform. It should not require excessive physical strength, complex movements, or intricate coordination. What might come to mind is if you think of a lot of Eastern style martial arts that are very flowy and flowery with their movements, and they're very attractive and very cool. Those are not necessarily simple, though, right? They take a lot of years to master those things. Instead, we want something that's got minimal complexity, and we want something that, by prioritizing simplicity, it makes the technique more user-friendly and it's accessible to everyone. So let's talk about one of the simplest techniques of all, the punch. And I'm going to set this down for 1 second here. So we can talk about punches. So punches sound like a really simple technique, right? By the way, I didn't mention this in the introduction. I am a okay, forget it. I don't words today. I am a black belt martial artist of about 20 years. I've studied Taekwondo, Capoeira, Jeet Kune Do, Muay Thai, Kali, Wing Chun. So I've done a lot of different martial arts over the years. I know I don't look like I'm in fighting shape right now because I haven't been training the last couple of years, but let's talk punches, okay? The most basic punch at the base level is throwing your fist, right? And you've got a few different variations to a punch. There's the standard martial art style punch, which is typically thrown from the hip. You start with your wrist face up. You throw a twist in as you deliver it, and then you're going to make contact, usually with this the middle knuckle here, or depending on the style. Some styles will say the front two, some will say the middle two, but generally speaking, it centers around the middle finger. And so a very basic punch, right? And if you're seeing that from a traditional style martial art, it's going to typically look something like this. Or even sometimes. And that's going to be your very traditional style punch. But there are other varieties of punches. Who here has seen boxing? Boxing punches a totally different way. Instead of starting with the wrist face up and ending with the wrist face down, you're going to keep your hands up to start. Boxers don't throw from down here. And also because they still need to get that twist in their punch. That twist is part of the momentum that you're delivering with those punches. But instead of stopping it here, since they're starting here, which means they don't get that extra rotation, a boxer is actually going to twist over even further, so far that you're going to have the pinky up towards the ceiling. And so you end up with a boxer's punch here. And what you'll notice is that I'm trying to create a rigid structure when I deliver that punch. So where with a traditional style punch, my structure goes from my knuckle to my shoulder, to the shoulder of the arm. A boxer's punch leans over, and so my structure actually goes all the way to my back shoulder. whenever I deliver a boxer's punch. So you're actually going to get that same twist. You're going to get more momentum, more power, and more structure to it. And then you could throw a Wing Chun style punch, yet another kind of punch. So instead of palm face down when it lands, or palm over to the right, Wing Chun is going to be here. For anybody who's seen Ip Man, awesome martial art movie, highly recommended. These punches are thrown just right here. They actually don't throw the twist. Instead, these punches come right from the center line, and they go here. And then if you want to throw multiple, it allows you to do what they call chain punches, which are very, very fast. So if I'm doing traditional style punches versus those change punches, here the difference in the speed here. With a traditional punch, the fastest I can go is going to be if I want to deliver them properly. But with a Wing Chun punch, I can deliver those much more quickly, right? So it's a different philosophy to the style punch that I throw. Rather than trying to land one strong punch, and maybe it gets blocked or dodged, and then I used a lot of energy, with Wing Chun punches, I'm throwing quicker, fast punches, and it's okay if one or two get missed or blocked because I got a lot more coming at you. So why did I just go over all these punches just to talk about what something is simple? It's because a punch is one of the simplest martial arts technique we can have, and yet it's way more complicated than it sounds when you start getting down to it. If you've ever heard of a boxer's fracture, it's a fracture that happens when you hit with the wrong part of the hand, and that's very common. It's a very, very common break in usually the knuckles right here where the pinky or the ring finger is, and that's because throwing a punch is not that easy. A lot of people do it wrong, and a lot of people break their hand. So if that simple technique can actually be broken down in all these different ways, then when you start talking about kicks, spinning kicks, jump kicks, flowery, cool-looking blocks where you have all this kind of flowy stuff that hits and big spinning kicks and stuff, all of a sudden you realize that the simplicity of those techniques is just not there. There's a lot more complexity, and that doesn't mean those techniques can't be effective, but it does mean that it's going to take a lot more work for the average person to be able to execute those. So that's what we mean when we say simple. For effective, it's about is it going to accomplish your goal? A good technique should achieve its intended goal, whether it's delivering a powerful strike, applying a joint lock, or even if it's a defensive maneuver. It should be an equalizer of size and strength. This is a really important one. A good technique should not rely heavily on size or strength advantages. It should be designed to work for practitioners of various sizes, and it should utilize leverage, proper technique, mechanics, and technique instead of a physical size advantage. So now we come to one of our first demonstrations, and this is a really fun one to do. Would anybody like to join me on stage for a quick demo? Raise your hand if you'd like to. You are not small enough for this one. I need somebody who's actually smaller than me to make this one work. So, Amanda, Tiff, one of you guys? Perfect. Okay, give Tiffany a hand. So you want somebody that there's going to be a discrepancy in strength. Now, don't get me wrong, Tiff can beat most people up, okay? But there is going to be at least a little bit of a strength difference here. And so what I want to do is create something that Tiff is going to struggle, or I want to make sure that the technique I use is something Tiff can use without struggling against my size. So let's talk about something ineffective. Tiffany, what I would like you to do is try to stop me from walking backwards. I want you to just hold onto my shoulders, and your goal is just to keep me from walking backwards, okay? All right, so not very effective, right? And the reason for that is that I've got a weight advantage, right? I've got a size advantage. So even though Tiffany held on really well, she wasn't able to stop me from walking backwards. So instead what we want to do is we want to leverage some kind of a technique. We want to equalize the difference in our size. So the way we're going to do that is this time, here's something you guys can all do together right now. Take your finger, and I want you to feel down your throat until you get to the base here. And you're going to feel this little area where it kind of dips in. Now take your finger, just kind of, don't do it hard, but just push in there a little bit. Feel how that's really uncomfortable? All right, if you try to walk through that, it's not going to be successful. And so this time I want Tiffany to stop me from walking forward. And the way she's going to do that is by just taking her finger and placing it right here. And now don't let me walk forward, Tiffany.
You're making me uncomfy.
It's very uncomfortable. I can't walk into that because it starts collapsing on my trachea. And so that's an example of just one technique where I am using technique instead of a size difference to equalize that difference between us. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Give Tiffany a hand. Now, we had another person who wanted to volunteer. Come on up here. This is another fun one to show how technique can work. Now, before you come up, I am going to go ahead and ask you, this technique does involve me touching your face, specifically the area around your nose. Is that okay? All right, go ahead and come on up. And what's your name?
Keenan.
Keenan. Everybody give Keenan a round of applause. Thank you for coming up here, Keenan. Okay, so this is a really, really cool technique. It's one of my favorites. Once again, this is something you can kind of try on yourself. We're going to use one finger to affect Keenan here. And the way we're going to do that is there's this area right here under your nose where the kind of right, almost like the, what would you call this, the crease right here under your nose where it meets your lips. And if you take your fingers, or like especially the bone right here, and just place it right there and push on it, you're going to feel a lot of discomfort. So Keenan, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place my fingers right here, okay? And what I'd like you to do is not let me push you back, okay? Ready? Give him a round of applause. It's a very funny one to me. Thank you, Keenan. And so what we're demonstrating there is not that I have super strong hands, it's that I'm using technique, leverage. I'm using a weakness of Keenan's anatomy. And I'm using a strength of mine. And so that's how I was able to have a high rate of success with that technique. I'm sorry, effective. It was an effective technique. High rate of success is a critical aspect of what makes a good technique. It's the reliability of the technique. In other words, if I execute it correctly, how often does it work? And it's also independent from my opponent's compliance. That was a big fancy way of saying, if my opponent has to sort of work with me for my technique to work, it's not a good technique. You see this a lot in martial arts demonstrations online, where somebody will do this really, really cool technique, and it's something really awesome, but you think to yourself like, well, yeah, but that's because they threw the kick in that specific way, right? Or because they allowed them to do it. I would have just punched the guy if he tried to do that to me. That's because it's not always, techniques aren't always designed with that in mind. A lot of times they're designed to work in the classroom, so to speak, but then when they actually get on the street, it does not work as well. So I would like to do a little demonstration of this to show you what I mean. Would anybody like to volunteer to come up? Wonderful, in the white. Give them a round of applause. And your name?
Kaylee.
Kaylee. Say hi, Kaylee. I love that. Okay, so Kaylee, what we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate how to block a punch, okay? And I'm going to use a traditional Taekwondo style high block, okay? This is very effective in the Taekwondo world, and this is something that they teach regularly. Now, Kaylee, what I'm going to have you do is just throw a punch, and I'm just going to block the punch, okay? Okay, go ahead. Oh, you used the wrong hand. I'm sorry. Use the other hand. Okay, ready? Okay, now I need you to throw it right here, okay? One more time. Ready? Boom! Did you see that awesome block? Yeah. That was cool, right? Thank you so much, Kaylee. Did you see what happened there? I needed her to punch with the correct hand. I needed to punch in the right spot. It made it very difficult for me to effectively block that punch because I required some compliance from my opponent or perhaps some luck that she was going to throw the right kind of punch. So instead, I want to make sure that what I'm doing is throwing things or using techniques that don't require that. So let's just take blocking a punch. What would a more high rate of success type block look like? Noah, can I grab you for this one? Here we go. Give Noah a round of applause. This is my boy right here. So with punches, we want to block in a way that we can do without compliance. So what that means, my technique can't rely on knowing the type of punch he's going to throw or knowing where he's going to throw it. I'm going to drop the mic for 1 sec. Not literally drop sound, guys, I promise. Okay.
What are we doing here?
So what I'm going to have you do is just throw a couple punches as soon as I say go. Not yet. Wait until I say go. And what I'm going to do here is instead of trying to block these punches and actually like attack his arm as it comes at me, instead I'm just going to focus on making sure he doesn't punch me, because that's my real concern, is just not getting punched. Okay, so instead he's going to just come at me with whatever punches he wants. And all I'm doing is, you see, I'm just keeping my distance and just kind of patting his punches. And then I'm just kind of keeping that space. This is a much more effective way. Sure, why not? This is a much more effective way of doing this. Now, I could be here, and I could work on slips. See? Well, that could have hit me. Slips are a lot more dangerous. I'm like up here and I'm like trying to predict and dodge. That's scarier. Instead, I just keep my distance. I keep my hands in front of me. And I'm literally just making it so he's going to struggle to get a punch through, and I'm going to keep moving and keep my space and keep my distance. All right, we're going to stop now.
We are.
Yeah, we are. Okay. All right, give Noah a round of applause. Now, is that as cool as a Bruce Lee movie? No, it's not as sexy as Bruce Lee and doing a cool jump spinning block where I do a backflip and then kick him in the face, but it's more practical. It doesn't require me to know what he's doing or to have him comply. So now we know a little bit about what makes a good technique. Let's start actually breaking down the elements of a fight so we can really talk about what some really bad techniques are. So we have a few elements. There's your fighting stance. There's your defense. There's your offense, and if we have time, we can talk a little bit about weapons. So your fighting stance is a fundamental aspect of any martial art. A fighting stance, you want stability. In other words, it should provide a stable foundation. You should be able to distribute your weight evenly between both of your feet, ideally. You want to ground yourself firmly so you can't be pushed off balance. And it allows for more agility, the ability to absorb and effectively redirect techniques, as well as power your own techniques. You also want mobility. While stability is important, your fighting stance also has to require you to be mobile. As you saw when he was coming at me with those punches, the best of defense against punches is just not being where the punch is. And so me just keeping my range is the best defense against a punch. And it's also just as important when I want to hit him that I can close that distance effectively so I can punch him. And also, you need a good guard position. In other words, when I'm not throwing a technique, what am I doing? This is the classic keep your hands up situation. Now, there are different types of stances you can throw that we'll talk a little bit about in just a second. And these will vary a little bit for different martial arts. But we're going to start with the classic martial arts. Uh-oh. Hold on. My thing went to a screensaver. That was me. We're going to start with the classic fighting stance of having your hands by your side during a fight. Now, we've all seen this in anime. You know, really cool music is playing at this time. Doom, 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 doom. And they're just getting right up in each other's face. It's very cool. It's very dramatic. It's very dumb. And we're going to talk about why. So I am going to need a little bit of a demonstration here. So would anybody like to be part of a demonstration? Perfect. Come on up. Give him a round of applause. This is our new friend. We met in an elevator today. Yeah. Your name?
Molly.
Molly. Everybody say hi, Molly. Hi, Molly. So what we're going to do is talk about why you shouldn't keep your hands by your side in a fight, okay? I'm going to set this down. Now, Molly, I need to ask you ahead of time. For this demonstration, I'm going to tap the top of your head. Is that okay? Yes. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Now, what Molly and I are going to do is we're both going to start with our hands by our sides. And we're going to pretend like we're about to get in a fight. I'm going to try to punch Molly, but instead of actually punching Molly, what I'm just going to do is tap Molly on top of the head. Molly is going to try to stop me from doing that. She's going to just try to block it, okay? And we're going to see what happens. All right. Both our hands by our side.
And I can. Oh.
Very good, right? Very good. And just try to block with your hand.
Oh, I can't. Okay.
You gotta start down. Everybody get Molly. Okay, so what's happening here is that when Molly and I both start with our hands by our side, by the way, Molly had good instincts before she was doing the trying to block, where she was just getting out of the way. That's correct, by the way. That's the best way to not get punched, is just to not be where the punch goes. But when it comes to trying to block, and the reason we don't keep our hands down is when you don't have the option to get out of the way, blocking is your only choice. And if your hands are by your side, and I start moving first, I win. It's a race, right? It's a race to the face. And if my hand starts moving before Molly's do, I'm gonna win that race unless Molly is just exceptionally faster than me and has just lightning fast reflexes, which is just statistically pretty improbable. So generally speaking, instead what Molly's gonna do is Molly's gonna keep her hand just generally up here. There's other places like you can do here, you can do here, you can do here. There's a lot of different variation, but just generally, if Molly just kind of keeps her hands up in general, and now I try to tap Molly on the head, and like she's already got her hands up, right? And so that's why we really want to focus on keeping our hands not by our sides, but in some kind of a stance that allows us to block. And there's one other that I'm not going to actually do this because it would be very uncomfortable, but if you've ever seen where people do the thing where they get really close and they're just like, what? And they rub shoulder to shoulder, like, hey, what you want? What do you want to do? And then all of a sudden one of them just clocks each other. That's another one. You don't want to rub shoulders with your opponent to assert dominance. That does not work, and it leads to sucker punches coming from behind. Don't do it. Molly, thank you so much. Everybody give Molly a round of applause. So, in other words, summary, keep your hands up or you get punched in the face. For any fans of Dragon Ball Z, we come up with a lovely rhyme that we like to use. This is Jace from Dragon Ball Z, and as you see, Jace did not keep his hands up and he got punched in the face. This leads us to a lovely rhyme, which is, if you're like Jace, you get hit in the face. You can take that with you and use that. All right, let's talk about another very famous martial arts stance. Daniel-san's crane kick. Who here is familiar with Karate Kid? Everybody? Excellent, love to see it. So Daniel-san's crane kick is a move that defies all logic and common sense. Yes, it is a real technique in a way, because crane-style kung fu is a real style of martial arts. The way Daniel-san does it is not real. The way this is presented in the movie is as if this technique that is being done is the way that a crane-style martial artist would actually stand in a fight. That is not true. Instead, what you would actually do, this is something called a wing capture, and it's used for blocking. And then there's a punch that's associated, a kick associated with it to knock somebody back. I'm going to demonstrate the way this would actually be used, just because I think it's a really fun demo to kind of show how bad this is and the way it's presented. Noah, I'm going to ask you to come up for this one because I don't like kicking other people in the chest. Come on, Noah. Yeah, we'll do this one on the stage. Okay, so this one is super fun. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So this crane style thing here, right? Very cool looking, but there's a problem. We talked about stability, we talked about being able to move around, and the thing is, if Noah wants to get around me, and I'm here, I have to do this, and it doesn't work well. It's nice in Karate Kid because the guy just stays right here and goes, ah, and just runs at him, and yeah, then you can just kick him, but in reality, a real martial artist is just gonna start circling around you, and it's gonna be hard to keep up with. But that's why a crane-style martial artist would never do that. What this technique is really for is if Noah was to come at me and try to choke me or grab my neck. And so if Noah comes at me and tries to choke, like that, then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bring my arms up and through. And that's what that is. This is called a wing capture. That's what the technique is designed for. And of course, if he's really threatening me, and when he's coming up, which he usually is, then I'm actually going to, and I'm going to kick him back. That's what that technique is actually designed for. Not this. Thank you so much, Noah. Appreciate you. Give Noah a round of applause because why he continues to be friends with me when I kick him, I don't know, but he keeps showing up. Oh, and real quick, before we move into defense, let's just talk about good fighting stances in general. There's a lot of different theory about what makes the best fighting stance. A lot of it depends on how you're going to fight. Generally speaking, the closer you are to your opponent, so if my opponent is the edge of the stage here, the closer I am, the more squared I'm going to be. And by squared, I mean both shoulders are kind of facing the opponent. And this means I can punch with both hands. I can kick or knee with both feet. As I get further back, I don't need both hands. So I'm going to start doing what's called blading myself a little more. And the reason for that is the further I get away, I need more range with my punches and my kicks. From here, if you see this line here, if I'm standing straight at you, that's as far as my punch goes, and that's as far as my kick goes. If I turn sideways, my kick goes a lot further, and my punch can go a lot further. That's why the further away from my opponent I get, the more I blade myself. I get more range. I can't use the back hand, right? Or the back leg as effectively unless I want to actually twist and come across. But I have a lot more range to attack my opponent, and also it's pretty easy to cover a lot more ground. If I'm standing like this and I want to go forward, it requires a lot more energy. I don't have as much balance to get there, and it's going to be, usually I can only go about that far effectively. When I'm sideways here, I can usually cover a little more ground. And so that's as far as the feet go. You're going to find that like a mixed martial artist who goes into the octagon and stuff like that, they're going to be more bladed at distance, and as they get closer, you're going to notice them start squaring up. And that's because once I get close, I don't need that extra range. So I don't care about getting the range. Instead, I want extra weapons. And so then I turn this way. So I have both hands and both feet. So that's why you'll see a slight shift in the way they stand. And of course, you got to keep those hands up. And so different styles will do that a little bit differently. Taekwondo and a lot of those more traditional style martial arts will do something like this. Just generally keeping them up. If you're doing, there's some styles, including certain boxing, that will be more like this. They don't prioritize covering the head as much. Instead, the head will keep the chin tucked. This is especially in boxing. You just keep the chin tucked so you don't get knocked out. And you're kind of okay just doing this and letting blows glance off the top of your head as long as you protect the chin, because that's how you get a knockout. And then you got like Muay Thai, which is going to be like this. It's going to be a little more up and out. And a lot of these just have to do with the type of fighting you're doing. Wing Chun is going to be here. And it's going to be about just keeping something kind of out and in front of you. And it's about also keeping ready for those chain punches we talked about earlier. So you'll notice the stances are a little different depending on the style. But what stays the same is I keep my hands generally up somewhere near my head so that if somebody does throw an attack, whether I'm here, I'm ready to defend myself. I don't leave them down here. So that's just a little bit about fighting stances and kind of some techniques and tips if you wanted to have good fighting stances instead of ineffective ones like Daniel-san. So let's talk defense. Defense means you're protecting yourself, whereas offense is you're attacking somebody. So with defense, we're going to move into one of my favorite defensive techniques that we see sometimes in anime and in TV shows, which is trying to catch a punch. Anybody ever seen this technique before in a TV show where the punch comes in and they catch it and they look all strong and cool? Okay, well, we're going to talk about why we don't do that now. Who would like to be a part of the demonstration for why you don't try to catch a punch? You want to come back up? Go ahead, come on up, get up. Give them a hand. Okay, this is definitely one of my favorite ones to do because this is one that's always bothered me even as a child. I remember thinking, this is so dumb. There's a few reasons why we don't try to catch punches. The first reason is that you're not fast enough. And I don't mean you specifically. I mean all of us collectively as a species, we're not fast enough to catch a punch. So what I'm going to do is rather than trying to make you like figure it out and predict where I'm going and time it all out and get your hand in place and do what I'm going to have you do is just hold your hand just like this. I am going to, with your permission, punch your hand. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay, I won't do it hard. And what I want you to do is just grab my fist before I can remove it, okay? All right, this is a speed test. Almost, you're so close, here. Ooh, right, you almost got it. One more time, ready? Oh, so close. Okay, first, give him a round of applause, that's hard. So, we said you're not fast enough to catch the punch, but there's another part, and that's that you're also not strong enough to catch a punch. Let's test this out. So this time what I'm gonna do, go ahead and put your hand back up. Instead of making you time it out, I'm gonna start with my hand here, and I want you to close your fist. Now, don't let me pull the punch back. Ready? Okay, let's try again. Ready? Okay, one more time. Ready? It's really hard to hold on to. And the reason is because, show me those fingers. See these big finger muscles? You have very tiny muscles in your fingers, right? And he's trying to stop my whole arm. And I don't have the strongest arm in the world, but these muscles are still bigger than these muscles, right? And so that's one of the problems with trying to catch a punch is that you're trying to pit your tiny finger muscles against a person's entire arm and part of their back as well. So that's reason number 2 why you can't catch a punch, but we have one more. And it's that, this is a fun word. Everybody, we're gonna do a little lesson today. You don't have the necessary proprioception to catch a punch. How many senses do you have? 5, right? Wrong. There's more than 5. 5 are the 5 basic senses. I always have to write this part down because I forget it constantly. But almost everything that you consider one sense is really a few different senses put together. For instance, the sense of touch that you would think of as one sense is actually several senses. It's pressure, temperature, pain, and those things together make what we call touch. And so that's why there are, for instance, certain disorders where you can still feel temperature, you can still feel whether something is wet or hot, or wet or dry. You can feel all kinds of things, but then you don't feel pain. And that's because they are actually different parts of the sense of touch. You can feel everything else, but not feel pain. Proprioception is a really cool sense, which is how good are you at understanding and finding something in space without looking at it. Good example, you're sitting on the couch, you know you left the remote control right here next to you on the arm of the sofa, right? You reach to get it. Do you get it on the first try? If you have great proprioception, you might. If you don't, maybe not. Or you're trying to get the straw in the glass and you're doing the thing where you try to get it with your mouth. It's whether you know where something is in space without looking at it. And so when I say without looking at it, it also is something you can do in an instant. So when you're trying to do catch a punch, you don't have time to sit and track where the punch is and think about it and get your hand to that. You have to instantly react, figure out where it's going in space, know where your hand needs to go in space, and then have those things meet. And it's a very quick calculation that's very hard to do. And so with this one, what I'm going to do, and no punches this time, with your permission, can I touch just on the chest in general? Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to do is just try to touch somewhere on the chest, and I just want you to put your hand in front of it, okay? Okay. Almost. Boop, boop. Very good job. All right, give him a hand. And as you can see, it's really hard to get your hand in front of it, and that's because you're trying to do all this like mental math, and you're trying to get your hand where it needs to go, and that's really hard to do. So when you put all those things together, the speed required, the strength required, and the proprioception required, catching a punch becomes not just impractical, it becomes near impossible. And that's why it makes our bad martial arts list for defensive techniques. Oh no, come back, there it is. The next technique, the headbutt. Love the headbutt. Also, love Tanjiro. What a good boy. Fans of Demon Slayer here? All right, that's what I like to see. So the headbutt is a move that, when executed correctly, can be a good technique, but it is almost universally represented poorly in pop culture. That includes the example we're looking at here. So although our boy Tanjiro is the goodest boy, if you see how he's using his forehead here, that's going to cause not just damage to his opponent, but damage to himself. That's how you get a concussion. And a concussion is not a prize for winning a fight. It is, in fact, something that sends you to the hospital. So, how would you do a headbutt correctly? Who would like to be a part of my headbutting demonstration? I would prefer it be one of you guys. Anybody? Any takers? All right. It's Noah. We're bringing up Noah.
Last time he kicked me in the chest.
Yeah, I did kick you in the chest. Like, why do you keep coming up here? All right, for the headbutt, what we're going to do is instead of coming and going forehead to forehead, which is very painful for both of us and is really a loss for everybody involved, instead what I want to do for the proper headbutt is first I want to control my opponent's stability. And you see what I'm doing here, I'll do it in this direction, is I'm putting the inside of my wrist up here on the neck, locking this into sort of a hook, and then I'm placing my elbow against his chest. And what that does for me is it actually gives me a lot of control over my opponent.
Buddy.
You good?
I'm good.
Hi.
I wasn't ready.
Sorry. So it gives me a lot of control over him, as you can see. Then what I want to do is I want to suddenly drop my body down, and using that control that you just saw that I have, I want to introduce the nice hard part of my head to the nice soft part of Noah's face. And so the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to do it slowly, so there are no accidents. I drop down, and I use this hard part of your head, and I bring his face in, and I do it in one motion, wham! And that's how we actually do a headbutt. Now, for a quick demo of how the difference of this is, everybody take your fingers here, make a nice little fist. Now take those 4 knuckles and just tap right here on the front of your forehead a few times. You were too nice to yourself. Try it again, twice as hard this time. Painful, right? That's not good. Now, with the same veracity, I would like you to come to the top and right on the top. Doesn't hurt nearly as bad, right? That's because you don't have the same pain sensors up there. Also, it's a much harder part of the bone. And this right here is just, there's a big difference. If you ever want to crush a can on your head, you can actually crush it up here. Don't ever crush it here. Also, don't try that at all, because don't try this at home. General warnings, you get the idea. You didn't hear it from me. So when you're doing a headbutt, you always want to come in, use the top part of your head against the soft part of your opponent's face, and then boom, that's how you're going to deliver it. And ideally, you're going to deliver it along with a few other things. So in a close combat scenario, you're really going to come in, and what you're going to try to do is as you get in, you get in, and once you're in, it's going to be headbutt, elbow, knee, headbutt, hit, and then you can get away. And so that lets me do a lot of damage with the hardest parts of my body, right? The elbows, the top of the head, and I'm just getting all this and all of the most vulnerable parts of him. And
So many parts.
how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
The most vulnerable part, which includes his emotions.
Oh, buddy.
And I love him so much. Thank you so much. Everybody give Noah a hand.
There we go.
And so that is the headbutt, which is, in fact, a good technique when delivered properly, but we just have to make sure we're doing it properly. Now let's talk offense. We're done defending ourselves. It's time to bully people. Wait, no, that's not what we're doing here. It's time to talk about how to attack your opponent. Only if they deserve it, right? Everybody nod. Yes, okay, cool. Now we can, that's the disclaimer. We can move forward. That's right. They provoked you. They taunted you. They insulted your mother. Okay. Exactly. You get it. That'll hold up in court. So this next technique, I'm going to call it the flying anything. And that's because it applies to almost any technique you do that involves running across the arena/stage, jumping, hurling yourself into the air with no balance or control over your movements, and delivering some technique, usually while screaming the name of it. In this case, we have Mortal Kombat Liu Kang. I would like to demonstrate the efficacy of this technique. Who would like to be a part of this demonstration? Anybody? Tiff, it's you. Give Tiffany a round of applause. Okay. So what's going to happen is I'm going to deliver a surprise attack to Tiffany, and she's going to try to dodge my attack, okay? Tiffany, try your best. Flying kick! Okay, didn't quite work. I was so close, but maybe the issue is that I yelled it. So this time I'm not gonna yell it. I'm gonna just try to quietly approach. I'm gonna do my jump kick, and we're gonna see if Tiffany can get out of the way. Ready? Still didn't work. What's the problem? Two things, really. One is the telegraphing. And telegraphing is what we call it in martial. First of all, thank you, Tiffany. Everybody give Tiffany a round of applause so you don't have to stand up here. Telegraphing in martial arts is when you can look at your opponent and tell what they're about to do. So with a flying kick, obviously, very highly telegraphed. One, I'm running at you. Even if I wasn't running, even if I just started here and went, like, right, I'm doing a big jumping motion at you. And once I'm in the air, I can't like change the trajectory I'm going on, right? Like when Tiffany moved out of the way, I couldn't just start steering in that direction and kind of catch up with her. I was stuck on the path I was going on. So between the telegraphing, which is she could see it coming, and the fact that I forfeited all control in the air, Tiffany was really easily able to get out of the way of that kick. Now, telegraphing is something that becomes important in other styles as well, and we're about to talk about that. But, let's see, is it, yeah, okay, good. Anybody ever play Tekken? Very cool. Have you played with Eddie Gordo before? The button mashing champion. He just like hit all the buttons and he just does cool stuff like this. Eddie Gordo is awesome. He does a martial arts style called capoeira. It is a really cool style that I highly recommend you learn about. And if you can find a place to study it, which it's not super common to find, but if you can, highly recommend it. It's very cool. It's very athletic. And it will teach you a lot about movement. It'll teach you a lot about how to fall, how to recover, and just generally how to move in a fluid way. The downside to this style of martial arts is it is highly telegraphed. It's very difficult to do it in a surprise, secretive way because it was not designed to be an efficient martial art. In fact, the story behind capoeira, a little history lesson that you can totally go look up. It's super cool. It was designed by and for slaves who were told they are not allowed to do martial arts by their slave masters for obvious reasons. And they said, well, we're not going to not learn how to defend ourselves. So they disguised their martial art as a game. And so capoeira is this dancing game. In fact, whenever you talk about capoeira, you don't say you are practicing, you say you play capoeira, because even the language of capoeira is styled after it being a game for the reasons that was the whole thing about it. And so because of that, it was never designed to be efficient. It was never designed to be secretive and not telegraphed. It was how do we learn to defend ourselves? How do we learn martial art techniques in a way that doesn't look like we're practicing martial arts and instead looks like we're playing a game that's like dancing? So I can do a little demo of this. I am definitely not in capoeira shape anymore, but I can give you the gist of it. The stance for capoeira is very different because, as you can see from the style over here, capoeira, you're always moving. So instead of having a nice energy conservative stance where I'm here, like I'm not using inner energy right now, right? Like I'm just standing here. Capoeira has something called the Jenga, which is, instead, it looks like this. And they're moving the whole time. So if you've ever seen Eddie Gordo on the games, you see this is how he stands the whole time. This is the Jenga. And then from here, you're going to throw techniques. And that's capoeira. Now, the downside to it, as cool as it looks, first of all, it's exhausting. That was so tiring. Oh my God. Also, it's very, very telegraphed. All those movements were very cool, very athletic looking, but they drain you of energy, and you can see them coming from a mile away. And so, very cool. Highly recommend it as an athletic endeavor. Highly recommend learning the history. Don't recommend it as a martial arts style if you're trying to learn to defend yourself effectively. Before we finish, because there's still one more section to get through, I did want to call attention to the other panels that we're doing in case you guys are interested. That one was tiring. Okay. First of all, we're finishing up bad martial arts. If you like martial arts and you want to be more a part of it for the next one, the DBZ World Martial Arts Tournament will be on this stage tomorrow at 4:30. This is one where you get to participate yourself. When I was in my martial art heyday, I had these cool sensors that I would hook to my wrists that would measure the speed and velocity of my punches, much like the cool machines in Dragon Ball Z that would measure the strength of their punch. In this, you're going to get to come up, and every person in the audience who wants to can come up and do the qualifier rounds where you use these cool sensors, punch a kick shield, and you're able to then qualify to compete in the full tournament, where we then have you do the power-up challenge, which is where you scream into a decibel meter, and how loud your scream is your score. You then do the Ginyu Force balance challenge, where you do all 5 poses of the Ginyu Force while balancing bowls of rice on the back of your hand. And then the final challenge is where you put those sensors back on, and you have to do as many punches into that bag in 30 seconds as you can. 30 seconds doesn't sound like a long time until you actually are punching for 30 seconds, and then you feel like you're going to die. It's so much fun. So, if that sounds like fun to you, come back tomorrow at 4:30 for the DBZ World Martial Arts Tournament. Also, if you want to be a part of some voice acting stuff, that's, by the way, what we normally do with our time. So we have a So You Want to Be a Voice Actor panel at 7:30, where you can come and learn all about the do's and don'ts of being a voice actor, what it's like, how to hone your skills, how to build a home studio, how to market yourself. We're going to go through all the ins and outs of freelance voice acting. It's a really good time. And then if you want to practice it, at 10 o'clock tomorrow night, we have Dumb Dubs After Dark, the 18-plus version of our Dumb Dubs panel, where you get to come up. We're going to hand you scripts, and you're going to dub anime yourself and actually get a chance to try to voice act, and we're going to give you direction. But because it's the After Dark, they're all super risque scenes, and it's super naughty, and it's very funny and awkward for everyone involved. Please come for that. It'll be a great time. And lastly, if you're still around on Sunday, we have Anime Etiquette at 1:15, which is kind of a Anime 101 intro panel for people getting into anime. And lastly, 5:30 Group Therapy, Anime That Made Us Cry, which is really like a watch party where we all just watch the saddest anime and cry together. It's so much fun. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left in this panel, so we're going to make sure we try to squeeze through this part. Let's talk weapons. See somebody holding a weapon right there. Very cool. So, weapons are equalizers, right? The whole purpose of a weapon is that I can hold a weapon against somebody who is stronger, bigger, faster, whatever, than me, and it's going to allow me to, compete against them in combat whenever I maybe would not be able to on my own. They can either increase the amount of damage that I can do per strike, or they can increase the range of my attack, and those are the primary ways that they improve your ability to fight. So if we're talking a baseball bat, it's going to improve my range, right? Because now I've got the extra length of the bat, and it's going to improve the damage that I'm doing because the velocity and the weight of that bat, possibly even the material of the bat, is going to allow me to deliver more damage per strike. With a gun, even more range, even more damage, right? Fun question for everybody. There's not a right answer. It's just something that I think is fun to ask. What's better, a short blade or a long, blunt object? So would you say baseball bat or knife? If you had to use it in a fight against somebody who doesn't have a weapon, raise your hand if you would go baseball bat to survive. Raise your hand if you'd go knife to survive. It's always interesting just to see what the crowd says. I think the correct answer probably is whichever one you're better trained with, to be honest, because I think they're, against somebody without a weapon, about equally effective. If you don't have training, the baseball bat's probably the better way to go for you. If you do have training, the knife all day is probably your best bet. For those of you who play D&D, knife is slashing damage and bat is bludgeoning damage. That joke only works in nerdy places like this. It's so great. Okay, so what are some do's and don'ts with weapons? This one is a definite no. Blocking a weapon with your bare hand. Does anybody in here have a weapon they would like to use as part of a demonstration? Because I usually bring a weapon with me, but in this case, I can't. Would you like to? All right, come on up. That shrug felt like yes, right? Are you good to come up? Okay, come on up. And what is your name?
Caden.
Caden. Everybody say hi, Caden. Okay. So what we want to do is take a look at this weapon and see how it is going to affect the way that we fight. Now, before we go, can I see what is this weapon? Is this is actual metal, or is this like a... Okay, it's like wood, it looks like. I just need to know if I'm going to die if I miss. Okay, cool. All right, so if Caden comes at me with this weapon, right? And let's say you're going to do an overhead slash, go nice and slow because I don't want to die, okay? So he comes with an overhead slash, and I decide to block it. Go ahead, Caden. What's going to happen here? I'm going to get cut. Depending on how good Caden is, I suspect a master. I might lose my whole arm, right? So instead, what I have to do is figure out how I'm going to go against this long-range weapon without hurting myself, and preferably without losing an arm, right? So I'm trying to think of the right way to do this because, Caden, would you mind if I let one of them hold the sword for a second? Okay, if that's okay. Noah, I need you for this part. No, come on up. Okay, we're gonna make sure it does not hit the ground or anything at all. Okay, so if Noah comes at me with a long-range weapon, I've got a few options, okay? I can either try to get in front of the strike ahead of time, get him there before he hits me with it, or I can try to get in after he tries to hit me with it. So, if he takes the swing, if I try to go before, I can try to get in and jam before he's able to throw. If he does that, I can boom, boom. Ooh, look what I've got here. Headbutt. Great, right? The other option is for him to take the swing, me to try to get out of range, and then quickly close that gap. Now, in the way that he did there, where he's coming straight down, I'm probably not going to do that, because as you saw here, he could just come right back up. So that's really a bad option in this particular case. If he was using it more like a baseball bat, because let's just be honest, usually people don't have a samurai sword, but having a bat or some kind of a blunt object is a lot more common. And with that, usually you're going to get more of a baseball bat style swing. And with that, boom, and now I can close in and get in here. Now what's really cool is that when you're going at somebody who has a weapon, they get obsessed with the weapon, which you can use to your advantage. Because I get in here, and now Noah is focused on maintaining control of this weapon. He's afraid I'm going to take it from him, because that's his advantage. Which is why I use that to my advantage, and I don't care about this weapon now. I'm hitting him up here. I'm hitting him in the groin. I do everything I can do, as much damage as possible, and then I practice the most important martial arts of all, run to it. And I get out of it. Now, there are disarms that you can do, right? Anybody ever seen a cool weapon disarm before on YouTube or something? They are something that can be done. So if Noah was to try to come and, let's say, you can swing kind of over and over. Yeah, if he comes in and I'm able to detach one hand from it, pull over, and what I can do is come in here and basically by destroying the structure of what he's got here, I can literally just snatch that out, pop, hit, do whatever. Would I ever do that? No. And the reason is because the way that disarms work in reality is very different than the way they work when my opponent is complying with me, as Noah was right there. Instead, Noah comes in, and he just does that, and I'm trying to get this out, but he's fighting me, he's moving, he's holding tight, he's doing all this, then maybe he kicks me in the groin, and then I'm in trouble, right?
Thinking about it.
He was thinking about it. And that's why, and all it takes is me to get knocked off balance a little bit during this, and then he hits me with this weapon. And so when there's weapons, the best thing you can do is just get out of it, just get away, first of all. If you can get out, that's the best move. And then if you absolutely have to confront the weapon, you try to stay out of range at the first opportunity that you feel like they have crossed their own body line. And what I mean by that is, the second that I've got, let's say this is a bat, as soon as I do this, or this, what's happened is I've crossed my center line. This is the part where you can now jam me if you needed to. And as soon as Noah comes in and applies pressure to me here, if I try to come back, he has a lot of control. It's it's going to be harder for me to get around. Now, if I've got a blade, it's a little different because I can still probably cut. But again, usually, unless you're at the dealer hall in Animate Moines, people don't have a sword. So usually this is like a bat or something. And even if I'm like doing this and trying to hit him, it's not really going to matter that much. And so for that reason, as long as you can block it and start hitting at the throat, the groin, all of the sensitive areas, you're usually going to come out pretty good. There's still a good chance you're going to get hurt because when weapons are involved, you almost always do get hurt. But that's probably your best chance at survival in that case. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for both of you. We're not going to go too much deeper because we're just about done here. We've only got about a little less than 2 minutes here. Just a quick note on gun disarms. Don't do them. They're horrible. They're ineffective. Even the people that do them on like YouTube videos and stuff, they've maybe practiced them a million times to be able to do that one very specific disarm, but they are usually demonstrated on like inexperienced high school teens in a gymnasium who aren't going to fight back because they're not trying to ruin a performance. In real life, the second that guy moves his hand, if I was the guy in the back, I'd have shot him. They're making it look like this is good. It's not. In a real scenario, this is really, really bad technique. Things like this are just generally irresponsibly taught, and I just don't recommend going down the path of gun disarms. Sometimes I talk more about this. We just don't have as much time here. The only thing I will say is that if somebody ever comes at you with a weapon, there's some good news. I know it doesn't sound like it, but there is some good news. If I hold a gun to you and say, give me all of your money, give me your car keys, whatever, the fact that I didn't just shoot you and take them from you tells you that my goal, at least at this moment in time, is just to get your money and car keys. So what should you do? Give them your money and car keys. Give them your purse. Give them your child. Give them, okay, hold on, wait. Never mind, hold on. I sense the mistake I made. That purse could be Gucci and you don't want to give up the purse. No, I'm kidding. Don't give them your kids. Basically, if they want something, just give it to them. That's always your best course of action. The only time you should struggle against a weapon is when it's become clear that they are intending to actually use the weapon on you. And the only time you use a weapon which has a low percentage chance of working is when the only other option is death or getting seriously hurt. Then that's where you're going to fight for your life. So we're going to have to skip these things because we are done. If you enjoyed this panel, check out this cool QR code we made. This is where you can scan it and you can do a cute little survey for us. And if you did like the panel, let us know what you liked. And more importantly, if you did not like the panel, tell us what you didn't like and what we can do better next time, because that makes us better panelists and helps us bring better panels for you. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you attending. I hope you have a wonderful Animate Des Moines.